Welcome back to Just One Question, in which we sometimes ask 2 or 3 questions just to keep you guessing. My guest today is somebody I have gotten to know reasonably well in the last few months, and each time we've had a chance to shoot the poop, as you might say. I've been thrilled. Rachel Kaplan is my guest, and she recently published a book, which I'm going to hold up now because it says hold it up. It's about how to deal with your trauma and the wounded child within you. She's a psychotherapist, and she is the instigator of the revolutionary idea that we don't actually need a therapist. So that's an interesting start to any conversation about therapy. Rachel Kaplan, welcome. How the heck are you?
Thank you so much. I'm doing really well. I'm thrilled to see you and excited to talk. And it really is a revolutionary idea when I'm a therapist.
Exactly. It seems
What am
like
I doing?
uh, it's as if a plumber said, "You don't need plumbers." Anyway,
Yeah.
let's just jump right in. So, what inspired you? What got you going on this road to produce Holding Up Book? Again, this book, and we should add, going through all the trouble, trials, and tribulation of giving a TEDx talk, which has recently been um, published, if that's the right word, and the link will be in the notes down below. So, where did you get inspired to do all this cool stuff?
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking. It's a deep question. And before I answer that, I'm going to say one thing about do you need a therapist? Which is just that, like most things, therapy and therapists, there's a range of skill, there's a range of background. And in a moment, I will share my background. But the real thing, and this was the heart of the TEDx talk, less so the heart of the book, but the real thing that good therapy will teach you to have and teach you how to do is to create a relationship with yourself and between various parts of yourself. And that's not always happening. And not all therapists, a lot of therapists will just smile and nod and moan as you repeat the same story on autopilot, or they'll just kind of reframe everything you say to make you feel like it wasn't your fault. And the book and my offering and the relentless pursuit to share what my life has brought me to is it's kind of like I'm an unfortunate expert in a way. And I feel like I understand the piece where so many people are getting stuck at in their therapy. And so so basically just to give you the history a little bit, I have the same emotional wounding most people have from just being raised by humans. We all have human parents. They did their best, most of them. It was limited for most of us. And if you go back a few generations, people didn't talk about feelings as much, right? So we all have some of it, right? And that's part of what I talk about in the TEDx. And then my first major attachment in this life was this young boy that I met at 12. And by 14, I made him, or 13, I made him my boyfriend. And by 14, he took his own life. And it was a very convoluted, like kind of pulled me into this web of lies to say goodbye, but trapped me essentially. And so by 14, I felt really hollowed and, tried to escape to only thinking, which didn't really work that well. Couldn't sustain connection. And by 16, I was really desperate for relief and realized that if I didn't get some help, I was going to try to build a life over an empty hole. And so I embarked on therapy, and by 18 had my first healing moment. I was very naive and arrogant at that moment. So I thought I was further than I was, but it really sent me on this worldwide quest, I'd say. And I studied Eastern religions, and by 24 was in a professional program to become a licensed psychotherapist, which I've now been for almost 2 full decades. And the book and the TEDx and all of the coursework I'm doing is basically I was a really good therapist for a full decade before I actually felt like I loved myself. And when I was 37, about 8 years ago, I had this moment of realizing Oh my God, I feel so well. I just left a marriage. I had just finished this like very intense kind of training mentorship with an Apache initiated healer. It was about a year after leaving the marriage. And I had this feeling of, I actually was watching a little video. This was before I was on video, but a video of myself and was like, oh my God, I have no resistance to that woman. And in the few months after that realization and experiencing myself out of this marriage for a year and realizing how profoundly well and resilient I felt this unshakable urge to share that information and primarily to show what is the difference between, you know, compensated, hobbling around, still hiding this deep emotional wound, me, and this me that feels like a profound sense of worth and value and self acceptance, self love, which doesn't mean I don't have hard feelings. Everyone has hard feelings. And so I really homed in, I learned in my editing process on what were the essential skills that made the difference. And why do I think that most people are hobbling around compensated at maybe 60% of their healing? And how can I use what I've had to learn because my life initiated me in this direction to help people make it quicker, easier, more fun, less shameful. And there you have emotional potty training, which we can get into that metaphor, your favorite, momentarily, but I'll pause there.
Awesome. Can you take it now a step further and give us a little bit of why you don't need a therapist? What replaces that in this healing process, which you describe so
Yeah,
vividly and interestingly in this book? He said, holding it
yeah.
up again. There we go.
Feel, heal, and let that go. If
Right.
you know, if we don't want to swear. Well, first of all, let's be honest. The whole shtick that you don't need a therapist is a bit of a hook.
Hmm.
You know, but you might be in therapy and not progressing. So the therapist and the relationship with the therapist is not what the therapeutic industry and experts have been saying for decades is the most essential healing piece. I've come to understand, and I will die on this hill, that that of course feeling loved, feeling safe, being able to open up is essential. If we didn't have that kind of attunement, warm, safe place as children, it can be revolutionary to have a warm, loving connection with a therapist. But that will get you to the 60%, right? Where you feel good. Maybe you have very refined stories of why you are the way you are, but you're still that way. And nothing's wrong with you. We're all in it together, right? Um, but but it's like the thing that will change your life is not the relationship with the therapist. The thing that will change your life is twofold. And that theme of looking at my work through what is the essential conversation, a relationship, was really brought to me by the Walden Pond Thoreau, quote around, it takes two to know truth, one to talk, one to listen. So it put this lens on what is the essential conversation onto my body of work. But I'll, for a moment, just take out that hook and just give you like, what is the two-phased approach? And it's essentially this. Because we were, like I said, we were humans raised by humans with limited capacity. They were trying to keep us alive while feeding us dinner, and we were having all our feelings, and we didn't have words for our feelings. It's a lot, right? Because of that, as tiny little pre-verbal organisms, we were willing to do whatever we needed to maintain closeness and connection with our caregivers. And for most of us, that include reshaping and repressing aspects of ourselves. So most people will be walking through their lives feeling like they're kind of full of it. They're imposters. They don't really deserve the accolades, or if someone got to know them well enough, they wouldn't love and accept them. And then a whole slew of compensation comes from that. The other component of that is that it's, essential in our wiring is to try to avoid pain. Our parents often tried to give us alternatives to crying, like lollipops and TV screens and threats, right? And most people weren't taught that it's okay to have pain, that pain is just this signal, it's a sign that something needs to be moved through the body. Similar to the sign that we get that we need to go to the bathroom. We have a physical cluster of sensations that says, go do this thing. And with emotions, even though no one taught us this, we weren't emotionally potty trained. There is like a sign, maybe let's say something made you mad or something. Well, let's use you. You just got squirrely because you're like, oh God, here comes the poop talk. And Your New England self has been taught we don't talk about gross things, we don't talk about feelings. So something in you might have gotten tight or clenched, or, and right now is not the time to move that. We're having a conversation, we're going to put on the internet. It's not time to shake out your shame and disgust of being a bad boy, right? It's not time for me to wonder, am I doing a good enough job, and cry about how maybe
Right.
I'm not, right?
We're just
We're
going to get
doing
on
something
with
else.
it. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But basically, like, most people have gotten on with it for decades and decades. And to avoid the discomfort, they've had to create some pretty maladaptive, addictive, compensatory habits that for most people are wreaking havoc on their lives, whether they're abusing substances, overspending, desperately climbing the success ladder. So what I'm saying is, hey, you tried that. I tried that. It didn't really work. You're still walking around feeling haunted and like you're full of it and you're going to be uncovered. Guess what? There are these two things you can do that will actually make you feel better. At first, you're going to feel worse. These are the two things. The first thing is you got to find the parts of you that you deemed unworthy, unlovable, and, needing to be hid. And you have to court them back, meaning you have to rebuild trust with them and explore how do you actually bring them back into your daily experience, which would look like tracking who they like in your life, where do they feel safe, where do they feel scared, making sure that they have the right balance of rest, extroversion, activity, whatever it is, right? But tracking these sensitive parts that you were sure were the problem about you. So that's step one. And as we start to build that inner relationship with those parts and they start to trust us because we're not desperately pushing them down into an emotional basement closet, then they start to say, yeah, I'm not, they are full of pain. They're like, you love me? They're mad at us. They're mad at our parents. They're mad at us for pushing them away. So at that point, we get access to feeling some of this old wounding that we didn't know how to deal with because we weren't taught, and it's uncomfortable. And so then the second phase of the healing that will get you from that 60% place to that place where you just feel like an unshakable baseline of self-love and emotional resilience is learning that. And that is the subtitle of the book. I stand by it. That is what you have to gain is self-love that lasts, lasting self-love and emotional resilience. But the last step of that is learning the actual mechanical skills of allowing emotional pain to clear from the body. And that's about allowing it to be felt, allowing it to come up, knowing how to work with the energetics of emotion. So kind of how to have those emotional movements, if you will. We'll keep it light for you because it's, New England, don't talk about poop guy. But basically, like, how do you clear your feelings out? How do you move your feelings and have your feelings like you'd have a poop? And in the book, that is like really the crux of the book. It's like the how-to manual we never got. And I go into the basics of how do you actually bring your awareness into your pain? And then what are the different shapes that pain can come in, right? I think that the most important skills, it's not about having very nuanced language. And this is a place, for instance, I differ with Brene Brown. She will talk about the specificity of naming emotions. I think that's great for poetry. That's great for communicating with your partner, maybe. But I think if you're trying to allow emotions to be what they are, which is a physical experience that cascades through your body, the simpler the better. So I talk about anger, sadness, fear, and shame, and a little bit about happiness, but that's not something, it's not quite the same. And basically they have different energetic templates. Anger is explosive. Your heat rises, you get tense, you want to explode. Sadness is implosive. You feel a collapsing heavy ache. Maybe if you're lucky, salt water will drip from your eyeballs, right? It's a downward energetic. Fear is a combination, right? You hear about fight and flight versus freeze. So there's a version of that. And shame, which is really the root of the issue for all of us, which I would describe as a feeling of, am I enough? Am I okay? Am I lovable? Do I belong? That's essentially shame. It's usually a heavy, implosive feeling, but sometimes to overcome it in like the end of our healing work, we really have to fight back against it. So you might be bringing in some of the more explosive, energetic practices to say, no, I'm not going to walk around feeling like a failure. I'm not going to believe what this, tragedy taught me about myself. I'm going to fight back. And so each chapter, after I just do the basics of how do you feel, we're going to go into, really understanding those different emotions. And then I create a lot of really practical suggestions of ways you can literally try to have emotional release that's proactive. And then the last step I'll say is once you bring your parts in, once you actually start showing up more as who you are, who you really are, and then once you clear out some of that backlog of unfelt pain, you have this opportunity to shape a life and live a life that's actually authentic for you. And there's kind of like a testing process there, because the reason we shut ourselves down and stopped having pain and stopped expressing our full selves was that when we were tiny, to lose love would have been deadly. Like an uncared for baby is a dead baby, at the most extreme. But now we're old enough to listen to podcasts like this, to give TEDx talks, we have, hopefully the capacity to leave a situation that's not healthy for us. And so we have to test out, if someone leaves me because I suddenly express my needs or I'm suddenly a little messier, will I die? And, spoiler alert, you won't, most likely, you might have
Most
hard
likely.
feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might have hard feelings, but you're going to learn through this book and through your emotional potty training how to handle them. And so there's this real coming into presence with yourself where you stop living in fear of this like infantile reality, and you become brave enough and willing to actually go for the life that's for you and to actually give your gift, your unique, quirky gift, which is probably based on you having those repressed parts back online. And then you can get your heart broken, you can screw up, you can have, failures, because you can feel through it. So you don't have to be afraid of life. And it's really that, and that's how I would define emotional resilience. It's like, I say it's, and I have a sticker for this, emotional resilience is better than happy, or is the new happy. It's like, if you get strong enough to have emotional resilience, you're going to be happy a lot of the time. I'm one of the happiest people I know. But when I'm not happy, I am whatever I am. I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm capable of feeling these other things. And that lets me know that I can handle life. That's actually what we need at these times, is to know that we can work with all of our feelings. And it's really, there's nothing like it. Feeling like you are enough, feeling like you are willing to be your quirky self, and knowing that you can handle your feelings is, to me, the best thing ever. And so that's what I am using my life force to do. Thank you for asking and helping me bring that message forward.
Amazing. So, yeah, I will say, in honor of Rachel Kaplan, ladies and gentlemen, I have come to accept the word poop into my everyday vocabulary as a New Englander, because I want to deeply honor the what I've learned from you and the wisdom of this process of letting things come into your ken and then work their way through your body and emotional system. So I really think I don't often evangelize. I let the guest do the evangelism, his or herself. But in this case, I just want to add my enthusiastic you betcha to this, because um, I've learned so much from you in the short time we've known each other, and the, more than just learning to say the word poop out loud. There are deeper things, deeper forces at work here. So,
Yeah, I mean, in some way it's also a hook, but I will just say that that metaphor is kind of stunningly accurate, and I won't go into it. If you listen to any of my podcasts or you pick up the book, you'll hear there's just so much useful. It's like an immediate download of, oh, I know how to do that. That's all I have to do with these feelings, is like let them up and out. And it's hard. If it were only as easy as hearing the good idea, the good word, it would be a bumper sticker and not a book for most of us. By the time we are open to this, we do need to kind of teach our bodies and come out of all this conditioning that tells us otherwise, that we're not, especially for people who were raised as men. It's like, you guys had it worse in a lot of ways. And, I don't generally feel bad so much for men, but in this way, I would say I actually do. I think it's one of the deeper prisons to be in, is to be taught you're not allowed to have feelings. And so I really Just want to say, just like everybody poops, we all have feelings, and learning how to feel as bad as we actually feel is the single most effective, fast tracked way to feel better.
Amen. Yes, and absolutely. Get Rachel's book. Holding up one last time, uh, and watch the TEDx talk, because you can learn a
It
lot.
was good, right?
It was good, even from that rather short introduction. And then do your work. This is all about all of us becoming fully human, and not just those of us from New England who have a thing or two to learn. So
No, we're all in the same boat. We're all in it.
thank you,
And
Rachel.
thank you. And I just want to real quick sing your praises. It was such a delight to have your guidance in the shaping of my TEDx. And I always need help around being palatable. So thank you for that and believing in me. And it was a delightful experience. I'm really happy to have that. Yeah.
Amen. We're proud to have it as part of TEDx Walden Pond 2024. Notes again below to click to it and the book. So thank you, Rachel. Go forth and prosper, and may there be a ton of emotional pooping going on from now on.
Maybe so.